The other story involves that great player. His name is Josh Gibson, legendary catcher, 1930s into the 1940s. Here's the backdrop. Major League Baseball has approved not only the continued admittance of great stars from the old Negro Leagues, they have now indoctrinated all the statistics from the Black Leagues. It started in 1920 that run till 1954 when the Black Leagues eventually folded after the Jackie Robinson barrier was broken down. They have now allowed all the baseball statistics from the, quote, Negro Leagues to be incorporated at the Hall of Fame on their website with all the statistics of our great stars, yesteryear from Babe Ruth through Ted Williams to where we are today. That's not a problem except this. As they formed a research committee to dig up the statistics of the Negro Leagues to validate their stars, and we knew who the names were, from Josh Gibson to Cool Papa Bell to Satchel Paige. What they found was fragmented statistics, and that's a big issue. They found box scores. They found newspaper stories. Well, that validates what Josh Gibson did with the Homestead Grays. But there were chunks of seasons in which there were no box scores and there were no newspaper stories, etc. And what they did was they went out and they took not just stats from the Negro Leagues, but the Negro League teams they barnstormed. They played exhibition games. They'd play a major league team. They'd play minor league teams. They'd play beer league teams. They played the House of David, a Jewish traveling semi-pro team.
House of David?
Exactly. I've got pictures to verify that. But they went back in these exhibitions and they took the stats and box scores of the exhibitions and they incorporated them with the Negro League numbers, which in essence kind of drove all the statistics of all the superstars from the Black Leagues up to the point now that Josh Gibson has superseded everything Ty Cobb did, everything Babe Ruth did, everything Ted Williams did. But Major League Baseball structure in the American League and the National League and the old Federal League, those were mandated league-sanctioned games. They took the Negro Leagues that had an American League and a National League and the Negro Leagues, but then they took all these exhibitions that they had access to data and they poured them into the pot and mixed it up and said, these stats count. That to me is stunning because the NFL does not include AFL stats. Mm-hmm. NBA history does not include the ABA. NHL does not include what the World Hockey Association did. We're going to take Harlem Globetrotter games and put that in the NBA and make it. So that's the only deficiency to what they did. They have every right to honor all the great players of yesteryear, and they're virtually all gone, John. And there's hardly any video of any of those guys. But we have the stories, and I mean the greatness of Buck Leonard, Buck O'Neill, Satchel Paige, and the stories those guys told, the greatness of these players. But this whole how they gathered the statistics really bothers me. For example, the new all-time leader, if you went to the Baseball Hall of Fame today and punched it up in batting average, it's not Ty Cobb anymore at 367. It was Josh Gibson at 372. The all-time single-season batting average used to be Ted Williams at 406. It is now Josh Gibson, 1943, 460.
Wow.
In the Negro Leagues. Slugging percentage used to be the Bambino, 690. It is now Josh Gibson, 718. OPS used to be the Babe, 1164 OPS. Is now Josh Gibson, 1177. Slugging percentage used to be your guy, Barry Bonds, 863.
Barry Bonds.
Josh Gibson, 974. This is not to denigrate what he did with the Homestead Grays, but the fact that they took all these statistics from these exhibition games and these semi-pro games they had access to and poured it into the mix, that's a problem. You know, how do you equate Gibson's accomplishment in the level of competition? That to me is an issue. How do you equate Gibson never faced Babe Ruth, the pitcher? Gibson never batted against Nolan Ryan. How do you equate Satchel Paige that era versus the great Hank Greenberg, the Detroit slugger from that era? They deserve to be in the hall, but do they deserve to have an asterisk on their plaque when you put the stats up there? Because it just wasn't Negro League games. It was all this other stuff. And then I thought to myself, I wrote a column on it today, and I've gotten a lot of response. Did MLB do this to honor the greats? Did MLB do this out of guilt because blacks were barred from baseball till Jackie Robinson, Larry Doby broke the barrier in 1947-48? Did they fear putting an asterisk up in a Hall of Fame plaque with these guys, with their stats? Because all of a sudden it'd be separate but equal. It's a really big issue.
Yeah.
I interviewed as a sports talk show host, some here in San Diego, prior to that in Phoenix, and before that in Cleveland. I interviewed Cool Papa Bell, Buck Leonard, Buck O'Neill, Will Foster, Quincy Troop, great catcher, Monty Irvin, Larry Doby, Sam Jethro, and the stars that you would recognize who started their careers in 53, 54 in the Negro Leagues that then folded, Ernie Banks, Willie Mays, Henry Aaron. The stories they told were amazing. But how should baseball have handled this? So you tell me, asterisk, make a mistake with the mathematics and how they compiled them, or should we just accept Josh Gibson's greatness as Josh Gibson's greatness, regardless of what the numbers say? And John Riley says,
it's tricky. This is very tricky, especially in the culture of America today in 2024 with woke and everything else. But it is clearly a stain in the Major League Baseball history. It's like the original sin of baseball, and they have to correct it. Now, we could make arguments comparing players from different eras that never played each other, just in Major League Baseball, not even talking about the Negro Leagues. But there's always various levels of competition. Back in the day, there was shorter seasons. Now there are longer seasons. I mean, none of them, Hank Greenberg didn't have to play against any of those Negro League pitchers either, who were also fantastic players. I mean, what's your take on the quality of competition in the Negro League versus MLB? Were they on par? Was one better than the other?
Well, I think Major League Baseball was better, but they had great superstars, African Americans, who were never allowed to cross the street to play. So they were playing against other great people, but not top to bottom. But see, my beef is not the rosters and who they were as players. My beef is, how can you take these exhibition games against semi-pro teams and the House of David Jewish touring team and take all those stats as exhibitions and put them in and say, that's why Josh Gibson has this all-time record great batting average? Maybe I'm too much a purist. I mean, I honor the players. I love going to Cooperstown, the Hall of Fame. You've never been to Cooperstown, you should.
No,
go.
I've been there.
You should go to the 617 area code. But I have no problem with the players getting in. I just think the stats are kind of skewed, but that's me. I'll ask baseball fan out there, jump into the chat box on Fans Forum. Do you buy what I say, or am I being too much of a purist and we should just honor the guys because these guys were great?
Well, how many home runs would Josh Gibson have if today's Oakland A's were playing in the Negro League? Right?
A lot of people of the opinion that if we could compile all the records, Josh would have hit 700.
Oh, yeah.
Easy home runs.
See, in my opinion, you include them. You go include them all, and you don't necessarily need an asterisk. You just need to tell the full story. I mean, it's the same thing with Pete Rose or all these other guys that have been banned. I think you include them, you show their data, you show the records, and then you include a paragraph on the plaque that explains the situation so people can take it in context. Now, you're comparing stats. Like imagine talking about Josh Gibson. What about Bob Gibson? He pitched in an era when the mound was like, a mile up in the air and he was dominant. And then they switched the rules. And so, it's all apples and oranges in the end. I say throw all the data in, include the story, and move forward.
Old-time baseball fan. Fans Forum box is open. Give us an opinion on that situation.